The bizarre European Commission plan involves sending food parcels to British food banks for the needy from the EU's wine, lakes and food mountains of surpluses produced by the protective measures in the Common Agricultural Policy (CAP). Tory Brexiteers last night branded the proposal the last throw of the dice of Project Fear by EU blackmailers, hoping to scare Britons into changing their minds and remaining. There was also a warning that it indicates that the EU might try to illegally block food being sold to Britain if it leaves without a formal deal. The revelation came as a major new report by leading economists has attacked the misleading UK Treasury economic models which are at the heart of many of the Project Fear claims. Meanwhile, tourism chiefs pointed out the potential benefits of Brexit and said that the end of EU rules could provide the industry with a massive boost. The revelation about food parcels from the EU emerged at an event in Brussels last week where EU bureaucrats working for the Commission's International Development Department were present. They revealed that the plans for a no-deal Brexit, including providing humanitarian aid to the UK, European Commission plans to send food parcels to British food banks. Image Getty Images. Food bank in England. Image Anthony Devlin. Getty Images. According to a source, officials said that in the event there are food shortages in Britain, they would send supplies from the food mountains and wine lakes from Common Agricultural Policy (CAP) surpluses to supply British food banks. The Commission has declined to comment on the report but has not denied the plans are being put in place when contacted by the Sunday Express. But the revelation has been greeted with astonishment by Brexiteer Conservative MPs. North West Leicestershire MP Andrew Britons said, "This really is the last throw of the Project Fear dice from the EU blackmailers. The only way there will be a food shortage in Britain is if the EU puts up illegal non-tariff barriers to stop food coming in. This of course would break World Trade Organization (WTO) rules, so would be contrary to international law. It's completely ludicrous, and if they were to do that, then what would be the point of signing an international agreement with the EU if they cannot even abide by the WTO one they have already signed?" He added, "It is clear that the EU elite and their Remainer allies are convinced that the British people can still be intimidated and bullied into changing their minds with threats like this. But they're wrong." Wellingborough MP Peter Bone said, "This story underlines exactly why we want to leave the EU. What an incredibly patronizing attitude from Brussels. There was a warning that the EU might try to illegally block food being sold to Britain." Image Getty Images. Winemakers in France prepare wine boxes for shipping to the UK. Image Georges Gobet, AFP. Getty Images. Obviously, we won't need the food, and this is more Project Fear nonsense, but it also shows how much waste there is with the Common Agricultural Policy, which is one of the many reasons people in Britain want to leave. Morley and Outward. MP Andrea Jenkins pointed out that the Eurozone is heading for a recession with three major economies already in recession. She said, "The way the EU's going, they will need that food aid for people in their own countries who are already struggling to get jobs." North West Leicestershire MP Andrew Britons. Image Getty Images. Meanwhile, a report by the Brexiteer group Economists for Free Trade has attacked the deceitful economic modelling used by the Treasury, which lies behind many of the projections about how Britain will suffer after Brexit. The report attacks the Treasury and banks' assumptions that there will be no gains from free trade, a border war with the EU, and the UK would be disadvantaged by tariffs more than the EU. Economists for Free Trade Chairman Professor Patrick Minford said, "My message to Brits is, unlike these self-styled experts, you got this issue right. Yes, you were right to ask for your democracy back, and yes, this is also good for the British economy, contrary to all that Project Fear." Meanwhile, tourism bosses have said that Brexit is an opportunity to slash the cost of flights within the UK and VAT for the industry, which the government can do once it is free of EU rules. Scrapping air passenger duty (APD) for internal flights would knock £26 off the cost of a return journey. It is hoped that if APD is scrapped, the cost of mini breaks within the UK would tumble and new routes would become viable. This comes as the industry works to persuade tourists who come to London to visit other parts of the UK as well. Tim Audslade, chief executive of Airlines UK, which represents companies including EasyJet and British Airways, said this double taxation anomaly puts the UK at a genuine disadvantage compared to our European rivals. Removing the tax for domestic travel would lead to more routes, greater frequency and better connectivity, and should be a priority for ministers as they look for post-Brexit opportunities. Some pointed out that the end of EU rules could provide the industry with a massive boost. Getty Images. Tourism bosses have said that Brexit is an opportunity to slash the cost of flights within the UK. Getty Images. Kurt Jansen of the Tourism Alliance said this was a chance to rebuild the UK's domestic aviation network. He said, when the UK has left the EU, we will be able to address the anomaly in EU rules which requires the government to impose double the amount of air passenger duty on domestic flights than it applies to flights to any other European destination. Ryanair is pushing for APD to be scrapped entirely. Under the present rules, long-haul flights are hit with a £78 levy. Support also came from senior Conservative MP Sir Graham Brady. He said, air passenger duty is a regressive tax which is bad for business and adds to the cost for families taking a well-earned break. The revelation about food parcels from the EU emerged at an event in Brussels last week. Getty Images. A spokesman for the Cut Tourism VAT campaign said, the priority for the hospitality industry should be to reduce the rate of VAT on accommodation and attractions across the UK from 20% to 5%. It would give the industry the desperate help it needs to compete with the remaining EU countries, all but one of which offers a reduced rate of VAT on the tourism industry. Patricia Yates, the director of Visit Britain, said the government did not want to see local tourism taxes introduced. She said, tourism is a very highly taxed sector already, and it's an industry in which we are competing globally.